Senator Kennedy sued Adam Schiff for $80 million. And Adam's response stunned everyone on live TV as the political landscape of Washington, D.C. descended into chaos when Senator John Neely Kennedy, a veteran Republican from Louisiana, filed a massive defamation lawsuit against Representative Adam Schiff, a high-profile Democrat from California. The explosive legal move sent shockwaves through Congress and across social media, stemming from a heated Instagram Live broadcast hosted by Schiff that attracted more than 200,000 viewers in real time. During that unscripted session, as thousands of comments poured in, Schiff made a string of incendiary allegations against Kennedy that would dramatically change the trajectory of both men's careers. The tension was intense, the language sharp, and the consequences immediate, as the nation witnessed a dramatic confrontation between two powerful political figures, each leveraging influence in very different ways. The episode began on what seemed like a routine evening when Schiff, known for his precise and analytical delivery, chose to connect with his large online audience through a live stream. Sitting in his Capitol Hill office, framed by shelves of policy books and a California state flag, Schiff answered questions about his legislative agenda. Initially, the discussion focused on clean energy initiatives, a central pillar of his platform, as he passionately described efforts to fight climate change through sweeping policy reforms. The mood shifted abruptly when a viewer raised a question about ongoing Senate gridlock, where environmental legislation frequently stalled despite broad public backing. Leaning toward the camera with visible frustration and resolve, Schiff placed the blame squarely on Senator Kennedy. "Let's talk about why these bills aren't moving," he said, his voice intensifying. "Senator Kennedy is stopping progress because he's funded by oil companies. It's pure corruption, plain and simple, and it's damaging our democracy." He went further, repeatedly gesturing as he labeled Kennedy Senator Oil, accusing him of putting corporate profits ahead of the public interest. The live stream chat erupted instantly, filling with cheers urging him to call it out, heart emojis, and demands for further explanation. For Schiff, the moment served as a rallying call, an opportunity to energize supporters against what he viewed as deeply rooted resistance to environmental reform. What Schiff did not realize was that his remarks were being closely watched in Louisiana, where Kennedy, an experienced lawmaker known for his sharp humor and legal savvy, sat in his Baton Rouge office with his tablet streaming the broadcast. Kennedy, a steadfast Republican, had long built his image on plain-spoken appeal and a straightforward approach to policy arguments. As he listened, his demeanor stayed composed, but his thoughts quickly turned strategic. To him, this was far more than routine political sparring. It was a direct assault on his character, supported by accusations he believed were not only provocative, but also unfounded. Within hours, Kennedy's legal team, headed by a veteran attorney renowned for winning major defamation cases, began preparing their counterstrike, and by the following morning, the political world was stunned by news of a $80 million lawsuit filed in federal court, asserting that Schiff's claims were false, malicious, and deliberately intended to damage Kennedy's reputation. Asterisk the lawsuits. 60-page complaint was detailed and methodical, laying out how Schiff's allegations were unsupported by any verifiable evidence and delivered with reckless disregard for the truth. And at the center of it was a startling piece of evidence, a leaked internal email from Schiff's team, obtained through undisclosed means that appeared to expose a calculated effort to damage Kennedy. In the message, Schiff allegedly wrote to a senior communications aide that Kennedy's voting record was blocking their clean energy agenda and that they needed to hit hard and find any information, accurate or not, to portray him as being in the pocket of oil companies, with the words accurate or not becoming the cornerstone of Kennedy's case, suggesting actual malice, the legal threshold required to prove defamation against a public figure. The leak sent shockwaves through political circles. as media outlets ranging from cable news to online blogs rushed to cover the unfolding drama. With headlines splashed across platforms as conservative networks declared, Schiff faced an $80 million slander lawsuit while progressive outlets argued Kennedy was attempting to silence free speech. Social media, especially Instagram and Twitter, turned into battlegrounds where hashtags like #SchiffExposed and #StandWithAdam trended at the same time, each generating thousands of posts within hours. Schiff seemingly caught off guard by how quickly the lawsuit escalated. Initially brushed it off as a partisan stunt and addressed reporters from his Capitol Hill office during a hastily arranged press conference. His tone defiant, yet carefully controlled, as he insisted the lawsuit was nothing more than an effort to intimidate those willing to call out corporate influence in politics, declaring he would not be silenced and reaffirming his commitment to a cleaner, fairer future. His supporters quickly mobilized online, flooding his Instagram comments with encouragement and praising his willingness to confront powerful interests. Yet behind the scenes, his team was struggling, as the leaked email, which Schiff argued had been taken out of context, presented a serious problem. Advisors gathered in late-night strategy meetings, debating whether to double down on the accusations or shift toward a more conciliatory stance. And although the email's authenticity had not been publicly confirmed, its existence alone cast a shadow over Schiff's credibility and forced him to reckon with the possibility that his remarks had crossed a dangerous line. At the same time, Kennedy moved swiftly to frame the narrative to his advantage. Speaking at a community event in Shreveport, surrounded by workers from Louisiana's oil and gas industry, where he addressed the lawsuit calmly and deliberately, dressed casually with rolled-up sleeves to project approachability. Speaking to supporters and reporters, he said he was not acting out of anger, but because truth mattered, and that when someone used their platform to spread falsehoods that damaged another person's reputation, accountability was necessary. Moments from the event airing on local news and spreading rapidly online, drawing praise from conservative commentators, who portrayed him as standing up for integrity against reckless political attacks. As the story continued to gain momentum, the media frenzy grew, with cable news panels dissecting the legal arguments, analysts breaking down the concept of actual malice and the difficulty of proving defamation for public figures, while progressive voices defended Schiff's remarks as protected. Political speech and conservative pundits framed Kennedy's lawsuit as a justified response to unfounded claims, deepening the visible divide across social media. Schiff's supporters flooded social media with memes, portraying him as a champion battling corporate greed, while Kennedy's allies shared clips of his Shreveport remarks, stamped with captions like "Truth will prevail," and the Instagram Live segment, featuring Schiff's accusations, quickly amassed millions of views as users on both sides amplified competing narratives, for every message applauding Schiff's bravery, another criticized his recklessness, setting the tone for a sharply polarized public reaction. Back in Washington, tension filled Schiff's office as staff members, seasoned in handling political controversy, found themselves unprepared for the combined legal and public relations crisis that followed, with the leaked email catching them off guard and raising troubling questions about internal security and trust. Some aides quietly acknowledged that they had warned Schiff against making specific claims without solid evidence, but his confidence in the perceived protection of his online platform had overruled their concerns. As the lawsuit's early days unfolded, Schiff's team rushed to present a unified front. Yet fractures were already evident when a junior staffer, speaking anonymously to a political blog, disclosed internal disagreements over the live stream strategy, noting that some had cautioned that directly targeting Kennedy could backfire. The revelation of this internal dissent only intensified media scrutiny, producing headlines that challenged Schiff's judgment and leadership. Kennedy, meanwhile, adopted a measured and disciplined posture, drawing on decades of experience as both a lawyer and a politician to steer clear of inflammatory language and keep attention on the legal substance of the case. Privately, he worked closely with his attorneys, confident that the email evidence would satisfy the demanding standard required to prove defamation. While publicly, he maintained restraint and avoided personal attacks on Schiff. At a Louisiana town hall, he responded to questions about the lawsuit with his trademark wit, remarking that he welcomed spirited debate, but that making things up was not debate, but destruction. A line that drew cheers from supporters and quickly spread online as a rallying cry for those who viewed the lawsuit as a stand against political excess. As this chapter drew to a close, the country watched two powerful political figures locked in a high-stakes confrontation. With Schiff, once regarded as a rising star admired for prosecutorial sharpness and media skill, now facing uncertain footing as his reputation and influence were tested, while Kennedy, leveraging legal insight and strategic calm, positioned himself as a formidable opponent, transforming a personal dispute into a broader argument about accountability. The scene was set for an intense legal and political showdown that would probe the boundaries of free speech, the force of social media, and the durability of two careers under the harsh glare of public opinion. The air in Washington, D.C., crackled with tension as the defamation lawsuit filed by Senator John Neely Kennedy against Representative Adam Schiff escalated into a full-scale media spectacle, transforming what began as a heated accusation during Schiff's Instagram Live into a legal and public relations battle that dominated headlines and social media timelines. Schiff, widely recognized for his sharp intellect and composed demeanor, suddenly found himself on the defensive, struggling to contain the fallout from a leaked email that turned his forceful criticism of Kennedy into a serious legal vulnerability. At the same time, Kennedy, guided by seasoned legal instincts and steady resolve, moved quickly to shape the public narrative, casting himself as a defender of truth while Schiff worked to regain his balance. As the lawsuit gathered momentum, the confrontation underscored the immense stakes of public discourse in the digital age, where a single error could dismantle years of carefully cultivated credibility. In the days following the announcement, Schiff's Capitol Hill office buzzed with frantic activity, as a team accustomed to navigating political controversy found itself overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. The leaked email, implying that Schiff had instructed staff to seek out any information, accurate or not, to undermine Kennedy, became the focal point of the storm. Standing before a crowd of reporters outside the Capitol, Schiff held his ground, declaring in a steady voice that the lawsuit was a distraction, though a flicker of unease showed in his eyes, and insisting his remarks were about accountability and that the email had been distorted to support a false narrative. He maintained that the message was selectively edited and part of a broader attempt to silence his push for clean energy policy. As the press conference streamed live across multiple platforms and drew millions of viewers, with supporters flooding social media with messages of solidarity, urging him to keep fighting, even as skeptical voices questioned his judgment and a prominent legal analyst cautioned on cable news that if the email were authentic, Schiff could be in serious trouble. Accurate or not, was the kind of phrase that practically screamed actual malice in a defamation case. And behind closed doors, Schiff's team was beginning to fracture as the leaked email caught them completely off guard, raising serious questions about who had access to internal communications and why they had not been better safeguarded. During a tense strategy session, seniores acknowledged that they had warned Schiff against making specific accusations about Kennedy during the livestream, urging him to focus on policy disagreements rather than personal attacks, with one aide later admitting anonymously to a political reporter that while Schiff was confident his base would support him, they had cautioned that the situation could spiral out of control. Schiff, typically known for meticulous preparation, had dismissed those concerns. trusting that the loyalty of his online audience would protect him from significant consequences. But with the email now circulating widely, that confidence was proving costly. The internal dissent soon spilled into the press, with outlets like Politico running headlines suggesting Schiff's own team had warned him and he ignored them, further damaging his image as a disciplined and methodical leader. Kennedy, in contrast, played his position carefully, addressing the lawsuit at a community event in Lafayette, Louisiana, surrounded by local business owners and workers, where his calm and deliberate tone stood in stark contrast to Schiff's defiance. Standing on a modest stage framed by American and Louisiana flags, Kennedy told the crowd he did not take the matter lightly. But when someone accused you of corruption without any proof, you could not simply sit back and do nothing. You fight for the truth, Kennedy declared, prompting the crowd to erupt in applause as clips of the speech spread quickly online, shared by supporters who viewed him as the target of reckless political attacks. His legal team soon reinforced the case with a supplemental filing that introduced additional evidence in the form of text messages between Schiff's aides discussing strategies to dig up damaging material on Kennedy's environmental voting record. And while these messages were not as explosive as the leaked email, they strengthened the narrative of a deliberate attempt to smear Kennedy and bolstered the senator's legal position. The media battle escalated as both camps competed for public sympathy, with conservative outlets publishing headlines such as Schiff's lies exposed in $80 million lawsuit, while progressive platforms responded with articles defending Schiff's right to criticize corporate influence on social media. The divide across online platforms grew even sharper, as Schiff's Instagram and Twitter accounts, once dominated by loyal supporters, turned into contested spaces where backers circulated memes portraying Kennedy as a puppet of oil companies, and critics posted screenshots of the leaked email, labeled with captions like "Schiff caught red-handed," a viral TikTok video that garnered more than 5 million views, contrasted Schiff's live stream accusations with Kennedy's composed rebuttal, overlaying the question who's telling the truth, and its comment section became a snapshot of the wider national debate, split evenly between those applauding Schiff's boldness and those denouncing his recklessness. Schiff tried to seize back control of the narrative with a second live stream, broadcasting this time from his California district office, where he sat behind a desk stacked with policy papers and reaffirmed his position with a firm tone, insisting that the lawsuit was not about truth but about intimidation, and declaring that he would not apologize for calling out the influence of big money in politics. The reaction, however, was divided, as devoted supporters voiced approval while others filled the chat with pointed questions asking where the evidence against Kennedy was and why Schiff would not acknowledge that he may have gone too far, revealing a noticeable shift in mood. What had once been an unshakable online community began to show fractures, with even some progressive influencers voicing discomfort, including a prominent activist with a large YouTube following who released a video titled "Schiff's Mistake: Why We Need Proof," urging him to provide substantiation or reconsider his approach. A message that resonated as the video drew thousands of likes and signaled growing skepticism within his base. The legal momentum then started to swing against Schiff when a federal judge ruled on his motion to dismiss the case, issuing a 10-page decision that denied the request and concluded that the leaked email and supporting materials were sufficient to move the lawsuit forward to trial. The decision dealt a serious blow, as legal analysts observed that it strengthened Kennedy's position by affirming the plausibility of actual malice, and conservative media quickly framed it as a major courtroom victory for Kennedy, while even generally sympathetic outlets adopted a more cautious tone, with a Washington Post analysis noting that Schiff's predicament underscored the dangers of making unverified claims in the age of social media. The ruling sent shockwaves through Schiff's team, who now recognized that the case had evolved beyond a political dispute into a genuine threat to his career and finances. Kennedy, sensing the shift in momentum, continued engaging constituents with steady confidence. And at a New Orleans town hall, he addressed questions about the lawsuit with a mix of humor and seriousness, joking that he had been called many things, but corrupt was not one of them, drawing laughter before emphasizing that the fight was not about him personally, but about preserving the ability to disagree without destroying one another. The event, live-streamed on local news channels, further cemented Kennedy's image as a principled figure standing firm against reckless attacks. While behind the scenes, his legal team prepared for the next stage of the case, confident that their evidence, especially the leaked email, would withstand scrutiny in court, and began exploring additional witnesses, including former Schiff staffers who could confirm internal disagreements over the live stream's content. As this chapter came to a close, Schiff faced growing pressure from multiple directions, with legal expenses climbing toward an estimated $500,000 and forcing him to divert campaign funds to cover mounting costs. Even as relentless media attention kept reporters stationed outside his office seeking comment on every new development. Social media, once his strongest asset, was increasingly turning into a liability as the focus shifted from his forceful accusations to doubts about his credibility. While Kennedy, in contrast, rode a surge of support fueled by strategic restraint, earning admiration not only from his base but also from neutral observers. The lawsuit exposed a sharp divide not just between two political figures, but between the power of words and the consequences they carry in a hyper-connected world. As the defamation battle between Senator John Neely Kennedy and Representative Adam Schiff reached a boiling point, evolving from a legal dispute into a defining moment for both of their careers. The fallout from Schiff's Instagram Live remarks and the leaked email plunged him into a deepening crisis, fracturing what had once been a loyal support base under the weight of intensifying scrutiny. While Kennedy, guided by calculated composure and legal precision, seized the moment to reinforce his standing as a formidable presence in conservative circles. As the legal fight escalated, the stark contrast between Schiff's unraveling influence and Kennedy's rising momentum offered a vivid illustration of how a single misstep could dramatically reshape political futures in the unforgiving court of public opinion. In Washington, Schiff's Capitol Hill office had turned into a pressure cooker as the federal judge's decision to deny his motion to dismiss sent shockwaves through his team, confirming the case would move forward to trial. While the leaked email and its damning phrase, "accurate or not," continued to haunt him as legal analysts across major networks dissected its meaning, with a CNN commentator remarking that Schiff's team now faced an uphill battle because the email suggested intent to harm, exactly what Kennedy needed to prove. The financial strain was just as severe, with legal fees climbing past $750,000 and forcing Schiff to dip into personal savings and redirect campaign funds, a burden that showed clearly in his appearance as the usually polished congressman looked exhausted in public, his trademark confidence replaced by cautious restraint. Behind closed doors, advisors struggled to contain the damage, weighing how to salvage his reputation while bracing for a trial that could ruin him financially if an $80 million judgment were imposed. Political allies who once rushed to his defense began to pull away, and at a closed-door Democratic caucus meeting, party leaders offered only muted support, choosing to emphasize broader legislative priorities rather than defend Schiff directly, with one senior House member admitting off the record that Adam had become a liability and the party could not afford to be dragged into the controversy. The absence of vocal backing from influential figures cut deeply, even as some of Schiff's closest allies issued vague statements about constructive dialogue without addressing the lawsuit itself. leaving him increasingly isolated as his office, once decorated with photos from triumphant rallies, now felt like a reminder of a fading golden era. Fractures also appeared among his staff when a second leak surfaced. This time from a communications aide who told a political outlet that Schiff had ignored repeated warnings about the risks of his live stream accusations, saying anonymously that they had begged him to verify the claims first, but he believed his followers would protect him. A revelation that fueled headlines and further damaged his credibility by portraying him as a leader undone by hubris. On social media, Schiff's once loyal base began to splinter as Instagram posts that previously drew overwhelming support were met with waves of criticism, while a viral Twitter thread from a progressive influencer with more than 1 million followers questioned his strategy, arguing that making claims without evidence hurt the cause more than it helped. A post that drew tens of thousands of retweets and reflected a broader shift in sentiment. On TikTok, where Schiff had once resonated with younger voters, mocking videos spread rapidly, including one viewed over 10 million times that paired his live stream with a cartoon anvil dropping from above, captioned, "When you accuse without proof," its comments filled with harsh reactions demanding an apology and calling the situation embarrassing. Schiff's efforts to reconnect with his audience through new posts were met with muted responses as even loyal supporters pressed for clarity on the accusations against Kennedy, leaving him shaken by the realization that the same platforms that amplified his voice could just as easily magnify his mistakes. Meanwhile, in Louisiana, Kennedy rode a surge of momentum as his measured handling of the lawsuit elevated him to conservative hero status, with supporters praising his defense of integrity against what they viewed as reckless political attacks. And at a rally in Baton Rouge, he spoke before a packed crowd of workers and small business owners, his delivery calm, yet unwavering. "I've spent my life serving the people of Louisiana," Kennedy said as he stood before a banner reading "Truth Matters," continuing that when someone tries to tear that down with lies, you don't back down, you stand up. A declaration that sent the crowd into a roar as the speech, live streamed across conservative media outlets, quickly went viral with clips circulating widely on Twitter and Facebook. Kennedy's legal team strengthened their case by introducing new evidence in the form of a deposition from a former Schiff staffer who confirmed internal concerns about the live stream's content. And although the deposition had not yet been made public, it was referenced in court filings, sending ripples through the media and further shifting momentum in Kennedy's favor. His public appearances were carefully staged to reinforce his image as a principled fighter, including a stop at a community center in Lake Charles where he met with oil industry workers. A deliberate acknowledgement of Louisiana's economic backbone, pointing toward the workers behind him. Kennedy told reporters that these people worked hard to keep the state strong, and that accusing him of betraying them without proof was not just wrong, but personal. An appearance that received extensive local and national coverage and deepened his connection with constituents while subtly highlighting the stakes of the lawsuit. Conservative commentators praised his restraint, with one radio host remarking that Kennedy was playing chess while Schiff was stuck playing checkers. As the senator's approval ratings in Louisiana climbed and invitations poured in for him to speak at national conservative events where he was celebrated as a defender against excessive political rhetoric. The legal fight took yet another dramatic turn when Kennedy's team unveiled a new piece of evidence. A recorded phone call between two of Schiff's aides discussing the need to push the oil money narrative despite lacking solid proof. And although questions remained about whether the recording would be admissible in court, it's leaked to a conservative news outlet, intensified public perceptions of Schiff's recklessness. Media coverage intensified, as outlets across the political spectrum dissected the implications of the case. with a New York Times analysis observing that Schiff's legal troubles underscored the risks of making unverified claims in an increasingly polarized era. And even progressive-leaning publications that had initially defended him began to temper their support, with one editorial urging Schiff to reconsider his approach to prevent further damage. The growing pressure weighed heavily on Schiff's team, which now faced a constant stream of reporter inquiries demanding updates on their strategy, prompting one advisor to admit anonymously to a journalist that they were overwhelmed. That Schiff was still fighting, but the narrative was slipping away. The strain extended into Schiff's personal life as relentless media attention turned routine activities, such as visits to his California district office, into logistical challenges with reporters tracking his every move, while his family also endured unwanted scrutiny as local tabloids ran speculative stories about his finances. To cover mounting legal expenses, Schiff made the painful decision to sell a long-cherished vacation property, a step he felt was necessary to avoid drawing further from campaign funds. And in private conversations, he acknowledged to a close aide that he had underestimated the lawsuit's impact, quietly admitting that he had expected another political storm, but that this one felt different. Although his team encouraged him to explore a settlement, Schiff refused on principle, convinced that apologizing would be interpreted as surrender. As this chapter came to an end, the contrast between the two men was stark, with Schiff, once a dominant presence in Democratic politics, struggling to protect his reputation amid growing skepticism from allies and supporters, while Kennedy, using legal skill and public goodwill, turned the lawsuit into a political advantage and emerged as a symbol of accountability. The case was no longer just about a single accusation. It had evolved into a broader reckoning over the power of words, the fragility of public trust, and the consequences of wielding influence without restraint in an era where every statement could be examined under legal scrutiny. The defamation lawsuit between Senator John Neely Kennedy and Representative Adam Schiff reached its peak, reshaping the political paths of both men and leaving a lasting imprint on the landscape of public discourse. What began as a heated claim during an Instagram Live session spiraled into a legal and cultural confrontation, with Schiff struggling amid the collapse of his reputation and Kennedy emerging as a conservative symbol. As the legal fight moved toward its conclusion, the fallout exposed not only the personal cost to both politicians, but also a larger lesson about the weight words carry in the digital age. This final phase underscored the resolution of the conflict, its enduring effect on political communication, and a central takeaway: the necessity of responsibility and truth in every public statement. Schiff's world was steadily unraveling as the federal court's refusal to dismiss Kennedy's $80 million lawsuit paved the way for a trial that loomed ominously over his career. Legal costs soared beyond $1 million, forcing Schiff to sell personal assets, including a beloved family home in California, to stay afloat financially. The monetary strain was matched by a deepening sense of isolation, as influential Democratic allies who had once supported him grew noticeably quiet. At a Capitol Hill fundraiser, a senior party leader deflected questions about Schiff, choosing instead to emphasize unity around shared objectives, sending a clear signal that Schiff's legal troubles had turned him into a liability. Even progressive activists who once praised his eloquence began to distance themselves, with a prominent environmental organization issuing a statement that acknowledged Schiff's past contributions but stopped short of backing his current position, urging leaders instead to ground advocacy in evidence. The shift was painful as Schiff realized the coalition he had built was unraveling under the pressure of controversy. Social media, once his strongest tool, had become a forum for doubt and ridicule, as a recent Instagram post defending his environmental record was met with waves of criticism. "Show us the proof against Kennedy," one commenter demanded, echoing a growing chorus of skepticism. A TikTok video viewed more than 15 million times mocked Schiff's live stream accusations through a comedic reenactment with exaggerated gestures and the caption, "When you tweet before you think." Drawing merciless reactions such as this is why we can't trust politicians, and Adam did this to himself. Even some of his most loyal followers wavered, expressing disappointment that he had not apologized to de-escalate the situation. While a progressive influencer with a massive YouTube audience released a video titled, "Schiff's Fall, a Warning for Us All," arguing that his unverified claims had undermined the credibility of the broader movement. The video's 2 million views highlighted the rapid erosion of Schiff's once unassailable online presence. And in a last-ditch effort to regain control, he launched another livestream, this time from a modest community center in his district. Standing beside local supporters beneath a banner that read, "Fighting for Our Future," speaking with a blend of defiance and vulnerability, Schiff insisted that the lawsuit was an attempt to silence those who challenged powerful interests and vowed that he would not retreat from what he believed was right, though his voice betrayed strain. The reaction, however, fell far short of the overwhelming support he once enjoyed, as viewers flooded the chat with pointed questions, asking why he would not settle and where the evidence for his accusations could be found. The shift in tone was unmistakable, and even Schiff's advisors privately acknowledged that the live stream had backfired, reinforcing an image of stubbornness rather than resolve. The accumulating pressure weighed heavily on him personally. With late nights spent alone in his Washington apartment scrolling through Twitter in search of encouragement amid relentless criticism, and one especially painful comment from a former supporter declaring that he had once been their champion but had made a reckless mistake, lingered as a stark reminder of how swiftly public favor can evaporate. Meanwhile, across the country, Kennedy was enjoying a wave of rising popularity, as the lawsuit elevated him to conservative hero status, praised for confronting what his supporters viewed as unchecked political slander. At a prominent conference in Texas, he was greeted with a standing ovation before he even spoke, as "Chance of Truth Prevails" echoed through the room, and Kennedy, ever mindful of strategy, used the moment to emphasize his theme of accountability, telling the crowd in his distinctive Louisiana drawl that the fight was not about revenge, but about preserving the ability to disagree without destroying one another's character. The speech, broadcast live on conservative networks, quickly went viral as clips spread across social media platforms, driving Kennedy's approval ratings sharply upward and flooding him with invitations to speak at events nationwide, ranging from local community forums to major political gatherings. At the same time, his legal team continued to press their advantage, filing motions to compel additional documents from Schiff's team and suggesting that more internal communications might surface to further strengthen their case. The pivotal moment arrived when Schiff made a difficult and symbolic decision, stepping down from his leadership position on a key congressional committee. In a short Instagram statement, he presented the move as a choice to concentrate on his constituents' priorities while managing ongoing legal challenges. But political analysts widely interpreted it as a retreat, with headlines announcing that Schiff's star was fading under the weight of the lawsuit and one outlet declaring it the end of an era for a once rising Democratic figure. The resignation rippled through progressive circles, prompting organizers to reevaluate the risks of aggressive social media tactics. As one activist told a political magazine that while Schiff had inspired them, his ordeal illustrated the dangers of making claims without proof and underscored the need for greater caution. The shadow of the lawsuit not only diminished Schiff's standing, but also triggered a wider reconsideration of how political conflicts were waged in the digital arena. Kennedy, by contrast, emerged stronger than ever, his strategic restraint paying dividends as he earned admiration as a principled fighter whose legal battle rose above personal grievance. At a Louisiana refinery event, workers welcomed him as a defender of their livelihoods, chanting his name as he spoke about protecting honest discourse, while conservative media praised him as a warrior for truth, with one commentator observing that Kennedy had shown you could win by staying calm and sticking to the facts. His national profile surged amid speculation about higher political ambitions. Yet Kennedy stayed focused on the lawsuit, working closely with his legal team as they prepared for trial, confident that their evidence, particularly the leaked email, would deliver a decisive victory. The broader impact of the case was unmistakable, as politicians across the political spectrum began reassessing their social media strategies, increasingly wary of the legal risks exposed by Schiff's ordeal. A Washington consulting firm reported a spike in demand for pre-post legal reviews, with one analyst remarking that no one wanted to be the next Schiff, as the case created a chilling effect that pushed younger lawmakers to hire attorneys to vet their tweets and Instagram posts, choosing caution over spontaneity. Political observers voiced concern that the lawsuit might encourage others to weaponize defamation claims, shrinking the space for vigorous debate, with a prominent columnist warning that when politicians turn to courts to settle political scores, democratic freedom suffers. The lesson was unmistakable. In the digital age, words carry unprecedented weight, and Schiff's downfall stood as a cautionary tale that even powerful voices can stumble after a single, reckless statement, while Kennedy's triumph, built on patience and evidence, highlighted the enduring power of accountability over viral bravado. For every politician, activist, and citizen, the saga offered a vital takeaway: verify before you vilify. In a world where every post can be scrutinized, amplified, and litigated, truth and responsibility must guide public speech, as the stakes reputation, trust, and the health of democratic discourse demand nothing less.